Good morning. I'm James Maxwell here at Rogers Gardens. It's the end of October and it's kind of getting quite fallish. We got kind of a cool evening last night, so that always indicates to me that it's time for planting or incorporating some native plants into the garden. I'm actually the native plant specialist here at Rogers Gardens, so this is kind of my gig and something I really enjoy talking about professionally and as a hobby. You may ask, why plant natives? Well, apart from the obvious that they are indigenous to our area, the other thing being they're extremely water-wise. They're obviously very beneficial for our local wildlife, and obviously they provide joy, texture and colour in the garden. Fall is the best time for incorporating natives because natives generally go summer dormant and they're cool season active or winter active. So at the end, usually the end of October into November, that's usually the start of planting season when we usually have cooler days, definitely cooler nights, and then just before we get the seasonal rains. So I am going to talk a little bit about some of my favourites today, but I just wanted to talk about culture to begin with. So native plants for the most part obviously are adapted to a dry, hot climate. So in the long term they are extremely water-wise. When I say long term, it usually takes 2 to 3 seasons for them to become what I would call drought tolerant. So it could be 2 to 3 years before you can really cut back on the water. So in the beginning, to establish, it may be a deep watering once a week, and then in the summer when they go into their summer slumber, maybe once or twice a month. As I said earlier, native plants are extremely important and beneficial for our local birds and butterflies. A lot of our local habitat, unfortunately, has been lost over the years. So I believe it's down to us to incorporate this lost habitat back into our gardens, so we can all do our part by planting native plants. I'm a huge fan of hummingbirds, so I always try and incorporate hummingbird-friendly plants in. There's lots of hummingbird-friendly native plants which you can bring into the garden. Butterflies are extremely important as well, and the other issue we have at the moment is the decline of our monarch butterfly population. Native milkweed, the narrowleaf and the broadleaf, we've been trying to push here in the store to obviously help with the demise of the monarch for their food and nectar purposes. Also, native plants require very little maintenance and pruning. The best time for pruning natives is in fall time, so around about now. So for existing shrubbery and trees, this is the time to prune back. But when it comes to regular garden maintenance, extremely no nonsense maintenance of great benefit of the native plants. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about some of my favourites I have today. So the Ceanothus, the California lilacs, one of the more famous of our indigenous plants. The Ray Hartman Ceanothus is a tree form or very large shrub California lilac. They can get up to 20 to 25 feet, so a lot of people grow them as standard trees. This has been grown at the nursery as a single stemmed standard. These, once they establish and they flower in early to late spring, are absolutely gorgeous. The flowers are absolutely stunning. It's obviously a very important habitat plant, nectar plant. It ticks all the boxes basically. Moving on, I've incorporated a couple of our manzanitas. So the manzanitas, I think most of you are probably familiar with manzanitas. It's one of our more famous chaparral shrubs. The one I'm going to mention here is called Austin Griffith. And, this has been in our nurseries for a long time now. I would call it a medium to large manzanita. It's got your typical red peeling stems. It's got the 2 to 2.5 inch leaves, greyish green leaves. It makes a fantastic foundation shrub in a larger or medium-sized garden. Obviously, it's important for as a pollinator shrub. It's the hummingbirds thrive in it, and the bees also. But the hummingbirds really like the small little bell-shaped flowers, which come out in the spring. Again, that's your typical manzanita there with a wonderful twisting red stem, and that one's called Austin Griffith. Moving over to one of the easier manzanitas to grow in the garden, I'm going to step down here, is Howard McMinn. Howard McMinn is kind of a medium, somewhat prostrate manzanita. It's very tolerant of overwatering in the garden. It's tolerant of heavy soils, so it really is a no-nonsense manzanita for the garden. The leaves are a little bit more petiter on this. It's more of a multi-stem, has more of a twisting habit, as I say, more prostrate habit. So this one's called Austin Griffith. That's one of the, that's probably the more garden tolerant of our manzanitas. Okay, another little manzanita I want to talk about is this little fella called emerald carpet. It's one of the best and commonly known ground cover manzanitas. The reason why I mention it is because it's extremely garden tolerant. Tolerates overwatering, heavy soils, clipping regularly. So it's just all round an easy one to grow. This little fella will get 3 to 5 feet across. They usually don't get more than 18 inches high, possibly more in a more shade situation. They are tolerant of a bit of some shade as well, which is always a plus, especially when you've got large trees overhead, that sort of thing. So this is a great little manzanita called emerald carpet. Moving on to some of the sages, I've only got a small one to show you here. This is called Salvia apiana, which is our common white sage. They do get quite large. Obviously they're very aromatic. They really give you that burst of silver or grey in a somewhat very green backdrop. So if you're looking for that contrast in a border, this would be your man. And this is Salvia apiana, commonly known as white sage. Obviously very important as a pollinator and as a habitat plant in the garden. Another salvia species for the garden is this Salvia clevelandii hybrid called Allen Chickering. Now the Salvia clevelandii is very, very aromatic. It's probably my favourite sage, native sage. This is one of the hybrids called Allen Chickering. It will get up to 4 to 5 feet. Obviously, it's another important plant for the hummingbirds and the butterflies and the birds. It provides shelter and just all round very good habitat. I cannot tell you how fragrant this plant is. It's absolutely phenomenal. It really pulls you into the garden. So this one is called Salvia Allen Chickering. Another plant I want to talk about today, just because it's full of flowers, is commonly called a desert mallow or desert flowering maple. The scientific name is Abutilon palmerii. This is probably one of my favourite plants. I love its silver fuzzy foliage, with yellow being my favourite colour, with gorgeous yellow cut flowers. Really easy to grow in the garden. They seem to be quite tolerant of heavy soils and also overwatering. Obviously, preferably you provide its natural habitat, which would be drier full sun situation. These will become kind of a broad 4 to 5 foot shrub. Once established, very fast growing. It tolerates being cut back on a regular basis. Hummingbirds go crazy over it, so it's just one of those ticks all the boxes plants for the garden. And that is called Abutilon palmarii, or the flowering desert maple. Another plant I'd like to mention as well is this Trichostemma. Trichostemma, commonly known as woolly blue curls. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because of its aroma. It has a very fruity aroma to it. You don't even have to brush past it. Just walking by it, you can smell the fruitiness of it. Very important for hummingbirds. I've had a lot of luck growing this. I love this because of its once it's established, it just keeps flowering. It really does. Again, the aroma. This one is called Trichostemma Midnight. Midnight Magic. It really makes a kind of a. They don't get huge, probably 3 to 4 foot, but they once established. I found it's a fairly moderate to easy one to grow. So that one's called Woolly Blue Curls or Trichostemma Midnight Magic. And I'm going to move on to a little bit of colour here. I don't have an awful lot of colour, just with the time of year we're in, with the end of the dormant season, just about to go into the awakening of natives. So most native generally won't flower till we get into the early to late spring. But these obviously they've been forced at the growers, so that they're not the best looking at the moment. But there you go. So the penstemons, the native penstemons, this is the best one I could find, just because where we are, as I say, in the season. This one is called Margarita Bop. I just love those electric purple tubular flowers. Really brings in those little hummers. Believe me, once they establish in the garden, the fantastic little plants they really are. That's Penstemon Margarita Bop. Another one I want to mention is the Erigerons, or the coastal daisies. Great in a seaside garden. Also in just a mixed colour, low profile border. This one here from memory is called Cape Sebastian. So that's your seaside daisy Erigerons. And last but not least, I'm going to talk about some of our native succulents. Yes, believe it or not, California does have native succulents, commonly known as Dudleyas or live forevers. I've got a couple here. One is a local variety called the lanceleaf Dudleya, Dudleya lanceolata, and then I've got an island Dudleya called Traskea, which is not generally as common as this fella. They are at the moment very out of sync with the seasons. They wouldn't usually look like this until early to late spring, especially this one. It's full of flowers. Usually these flower, as I say, in late spring. Up at the growers, so they are kind of completely out of season, but they are actually quite easy to grow. Great for rockeries. If you've got a stone wall and you want to pop them in, or even in baskets, or kind of dry scape containers. Hummingbirds love them, especially the lanceleaf Dudleya. So once again, these are the Dudleyas, or the live forevers. So that kind of ends my small segment for best natives for the California garden. Thanks for tuning in. Come into the store, come and have a look what we have. Don't forget to bring your mask, of course, and we look forward to seeing you. Thanks again.